Hey guys, welcome to the vlog. If you're new here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you can get all the awesome videos. Not a lot of people with cerebral palsy out there that I know personally that have kids, and a few months back I was at Cafe Rio with Brennan and we ran into a woman who has cerebral palsy, and she has 4 kids. And come to find out, we only live about 2 minutes from each other, and so we've started to become really good friends. So I wanted to interview her and her husband and their experience being married. So I've actually split the interview into 2 different parts. So hope you guys like it, and don't forget to subscribe and like this video, and we'll talk to you guys later. Okay, so tell me your name and where you're from.
I'm Kristen Wardle, and I've grown up most of my life here in West Jordan.
Okay, and tell me what you have.
So I was born 6 weeks early, and my lungs collapsed 3 times, and I have cerebral palsy, and I've had it my entire life, and it affects the way I walk.
Okay.
So my husband and I were at Cafe Rio eating lunch on a date one day, and I saw Cassie and her husband walking in, and I saw her husband walk over to the car and help her out, and I saw her walking and noticed that she had a very similar walk to me, our normal walk, as I put it. Yeah, I have a question for you. And I said, what does your wife have? And he's like, cerebral palsy. And I'm like, so do I. And he goes, you need to go talk to her. So I went over and just said, you don't know me, my name's Kristen, but your husband just told me you had cerebral palsy, and I have cerebral palsy too. And so we just sat there and chatted. We barged in on their date. And we just sat and talked about some of the similarities that we had feeling-wise and stuff with dealing with a disability. And we kind of started talking about, you know, if I had any children, and I have 4 from my previous marriage, and they have their sweet little girl.
All right, so tell me, how many people with cerebral palsy do you know personally that have children?
You know, honestly, I don't know anyone but you.
Right.
And I've met people, but I don't have any like close friends or friends that have cerebral palsy that have children.
Did you believe that you'd be able to have kids? Did you believe you'd get married? What did your parents teach you? Tell me about that.
So, kind of just going back a little bit, watching one of your videos with your family. I think it was, my parents did a lot of the same things where, you know, they always taught me that I would succeed. I'm the oldest of 8 children. My parents were told that they couldn't have any children, and so they adopted me, and then 4 months later found out they were pregnant with my sister Nicole. And then they've had 7 of their own, and then I, being their oldest, is adopted. And at the time they didn't know I had cerebral palsy, but when my sister right below me, Nicole, started walking before me, that's when my parents knew something was wrong. And so as we grew up, I've gone through many surgeries on my legs, and my parents taught me the same thing, that I was just like everyone else. And so as I got into elementary school, I noticed more and more I wasn't like everyone else. I didn't have the same amount of friends that everyone had. A lot of the girls in the neighborhood didn't want to be my friend because of my disability. I didn't ever get invited to the birthday parties. I remember one occasion not being invited to a birthday party, and as I was out helping my parents do yard work, as all the little girls were walking by, I knew I was missing out on something, and so my dad's like, I have an idea. And he took me and my mom to the store, and we bought this girl a birthday present, and then we went and hand delivered it 2 houses down. And then we just came home and we knew that we did something good. I didn't have the same amount of friends as my siblings. I didn't go hang out a ton with, but we did have a few girls in the neighborhood that I did become close to as we got older, and we did a lot of things together just within our homes. But I remember there were occasions of coming home from high school and feeling very alone and not having the same dating experiences as my friends. And so we had a family dog that I kind of just took as my like emotional support animal, I guess you could say. And I told her a lot of secrets, and that's the nice thing about dogs is you can tell them anything and they won't spread it to anyone.
Yeah. So did you get asked out on dates a lot?
No. High school, I never got asked out. Every time I asked a boy out, they would decline.
Well, did you have the desire to get married and have kids, or was that never something?
I think that's every little girl's dream, is to want to get married and have a family and, you know, be a mom. And so I did have those. I always believed that I could, and my parents always let me believe that I could and raised me that way. They'll tell me, you're not going to be able to do something. In my mind, I'm going to be like,
Prove them wrong?
I'm going to prove them wrong. You know what? If you set your mind to it, you can do it.
Right. Awesome. Okay, so tell me what happened after high school. Did you go to college? How did you meet your first husband? All that stuff.
So, like Cassie says, I have a first and a second husband. I went through a divorce. But when I graduated from high school, I tried to go to college. I went to Salt Lake Community College, and I took a couple courses there, and it just wasn't, I struggled in school. I wasn't straight A's, but I had to put forth a lot of work and passing those classes, and so college seemed to be a lot harder. So I gave that up, I guess, and that was just something I chose to do and decided I was just going to work. So I have worked since I was 18. After I graduated from high school, I've worked full-time, and I was working at an employer and met my first husband there. He worked in the warehouse part, I worked in the customer service part, and so I started dating my first husband, and we dated for 13 months before we were engaged, and then we had a 6-month engagement. And then it took us many years to get pregnant with our first, but I was able to get pregnant, and I've had 4 children. My oldest is 21, and she's up at Utah State going to college, and then I have a 19-year-old son who is serving a mission, and then I have a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old son. So 3 boys and 1 girl. And then kind of fast forward, I was married for almost 19 years, and then I thought my world was going to be crushed and went through a divorce. It's okay, I'm going to be a single mom the rest of my life. And the first thing that kept popping in my mind was because I'm disabled. And but what kept me like on that positive track was my 4 children. And so I went through a divorce. It was final in the first part of January of 2012.
Back up a little bit. When you were dating your first husband,
Okay.
did the disability come up a lot or not?
It did. Well, it didn't come up a lot, but his mom and dad, who didn't even live here in Utah, his mom lived in Germany and his dad lived in New Hampshire. So they weren't even close, and he was 10 years older than me, and he was telling his mom he was dating me and telling her I had this disability, and both his mom and dad tried to convince him that this was not good, that it was hereditary, that I wasn't telling him the whole truth, that if we did get married and we did have kids, all of our kids would have it. And she put I think a lot of unease in his mind if it was the right thing or not. And so
You had to talk him down a lot.
yeah, I just had to explain that this isn't hereditary. It's a birth defect. It happened at birth. I have a very mild case of it. A lot of people that do have cerebral palsy are in wheelchairs or are mute and can't live a full functioning life. And so I guess you can
We're
say
one of the lucky ones.
we're the lucky
We're
ones.
blessed.
We're blessed that, you know.
So, you found out you were pregnant. What was going through your mind?
So we found out we were pregnant for the very first time on Mother's Day with my daughter.
Did you have any worries or thoughts of, well, first, do you fall down at all with
I
your
do.
disability?
So when I'm walking, a lot of times I can fall. Simple things like a curb. I can trip over a curb.
A rug?
That's
fine.
Shoes.
Right.
I have to, like, when
You
I'm
can just
going.
up and fall.
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
just fall. One thing is, in my mind, I mentally have to kind of pace out when I'm walking. So like if I'm walking into a store like Target, I will pace myself walking from the vehicle to, if I see a curb, I have to kind of mentally prepare myself ahead of time for that curb. Like, okay, I need to.
When you became pregnant, like what happens if I fall?
I don't know if it was actually a worry. I mean, it's something that, you know, it's in your mind that that's a possibility that you could fall, but I don't think it was ever like something I really worried about. I did have a really bad fall with my first pregnancy, and they had me come in and did an ultrasound just to make sure, because I did fall and I fell flat on my pregnant belly. And so that was a concern, but everything was fine. They just told me I just needed to take it easy. One thing that the doctor, knowing I had cerebral palsy, the best advice they always gave me is, you know your body and you know your limits. And so when you're starting to get tired, you know, take time out and rest. Or
Okay.
so.
And so you ended up not having to be on bed rest.
I was never on bed rest. I was just always told to take it easy and just make sure that I listened to my body. And so
Did you carry your kids, all of them, for 9 months?
I carried all of them for 9 months.
Okay.
All 4 vaginally. My labors were not hard. I mean, they were
Typical
hard.
labors.
They were typical labors. I wasn't in labor for more than 12 hours. I didn't have to push longer than, you know, a half hour. Like, you know, they tell you, you could probably, this is your first, you can have to push for 2 or 3 hours. And I never did.
Okay. So once the babies came, what were some of your concerns? Like, am I going to be able to carry my baby? Or how am I going to get my baby around? Or what were some of those things, and how did you come over those?
So carrying my babies was a concern because of my falling. What if I fell? What would happen to the baby? And so I spent a lot of time at home. Fortunately, I've been able to work from home since I've had babies, and so that's been nice. But walking around a house, like our first home that we had was a split level. And so thankfully our bedrooms were upstairs with the bathroom and the kitchen. And so I spent a lot of time living on that main level of the house. When I would go downstairs, and I still do now because sometimes going downstairs can be difficult, I sit on my bum and scoot down the stairs. And so I did that a lot with my babies if I needed to get down.
So where would you put your babies?
When I go down the stairs, I would just carry them like a normal baby.
And just scoot on your bum.
Mm-hmm. So unlike you, I've been able to walk around and carry my babies even as newborns and toddlers. As I got bigger, it got more difficult. I don't know, I have a lot of upper body strength, I think, because of the hyperkalemic. If I can't walk, I will crawl around my house. After one of my babies, they nicked my spinal cord and it put me in a periodic paralysis for probably a good week. And so I learned to carry a newborn baby with one arm, like a football. And then I learned to crawl around my house on 2 legs and an arm.
Wow.
And I did that for a while till we got that fixed and figured out what that was.
What about cribs, car seats, getting your baby in and out of the car? Were those things difficult or not?
So getting the baby in and out of a crib, it was more difficult when we had to lower the mattress down. But when they were small enough that we could have the mattress higher, because at that time, I don't know what cribs are like now, but you could adjust the crib mattress. And so when the crib mattress was up higher, it was easier. We did finally resort to a bassinet in our bedroom when they were first born, just so that the baby was more, accessible to me. But when the crib mattress had to go down and the babies got bigger, it was more difficult to have to lean over, keep my balance, and lift a baby out of a crib.
Were you able to give your babies baths by yourself?
Yes. A lot of times I did it in just the bathroom sink or the kitchen sink because leaning over a bathtub was difficult. So I know that we bought ourselves a baby bathtub, and we would just set it. It was one that we could set in our kitchen sink, and that made it easier. I was always nervous trying to lift a baby because they're already slippery with their little newborn skin, but I was able to do it.
Okay.
But like you, we had to make accommodations. I'd always try and make sure that if I was going to bathe them, that I did it when my husband was home or their father was home.
Did you ever go anywhere by yourself with the babies?
When they were first born and little enough in the car seats, I could do it because lifting a car seat for me wasn't difficult. But when they got bigger and they were at that in-between stage between
walking and
not, it made it more difficult. And so I spent a lot of time secluded in my home. And thankfully I had amazing friends who knew I needed to get out, and so she was able to accommodate me, and she would help do the lifting if I needed it.
Cammy.
Thing you wish you had while raising your kids as far as resources that you did not have that would make it easier for you?
I think looking back, I think the biggest resource, I think moms with disabilities, is you need that support. Looking back, like I had my mom wasn't very far. My mom was 4 miles away from me. And so I had my mom, but it's nice to have, she's my mom. Like it would be nice to have a friend or someone that you can connect with that might be like you. Like I love that you and I have been able to connect and talk about some of our frustrations because we have a lot of similar frustrations. And I think even though I might be in a different stage with my children, I can be a resource for moms like yourself that have young children that are starting out your families that.
Tell me when your kids started realizing that their mom was different, and how did they just adjust to you? How did that all work?
Okay, so my oldest one day, I don't know, she's probably 4 or 5 years old, and she was walking down the hallway, and I was like, and she's walking funny, and I was like, what are you doing? And she's like, I'm just seeing what it feels like to walk like you, Mom. And it made me realize, oh, like, she knows that there's something different about me, and she's wanting to know, like, she wants to know what it's like. And she was at she's probably 4 or 5, kindergarten age almost. And so, I think as children, for my children, and I think it would be fun to have you interview them and see what their perspective is. But I think just knowing that they don't know any different.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know what it, like for me, I walked normal. This is my normal walk. Just like it's your normal walk. And I think it's easier for us that have had it our entire lives to deal with it in a sense than those that might become disabled later on in life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think as my children have grown up, this is just normal. And a lot of times I think what helps make it feel normal is they will crack jokes about it, or I can crack jokes about it, like, oh, you guys walk funny, but I walk normal, you know? And so, because this is what normal is for me, and what's normal for like my husband or my children is not my normal.
Right.
I think their sense of knowing that they can joke with me and it's okay. That we can, it makes it a lot more normal for them, and it's not any different. I think the thing that was hard for them growing up is when their parents or moms would be like, we're taking the kids to the zoo, and I'd be like, we can't go to the zoo. It's just too much walking for me. It's too hard. It's too difficult. And I think one thing I wish I had done earlier in life is get a motorized mobility scooter, so I could have done those things with my children. The times that I did try and do those things, it wasn't that I didn't want to do them, it was hard for me to walk. And so a lot of times if I knew I could have the security of walking behind a stroller or behind a shopping cart, I think that helps me, because it helps me feel not only normal, but it kind of hides that disability.
Did you never use a wheelchair to go long distances or anything?
No. So I never had a wheelchair. I've always walked.
You did when you...
So why not use a wheelchair or a walker? Were you embarrassed? Did you not want to have that limitation?
I think part of it was financially. There was 8 of us, and so we went without a lot growing up.
Yeah.
That's why I think if there's that awareness out there, and we can create support groups for those young moms that are disabled, to let them know that they aren't the only ones out there. They're not the only ones feeling that way. They're not the only ones feeling secluded, or not that, you know, as I think as you're raised, and I think your parents did a great job in it as mine, but I think if you know that you are normal, and just because you have a disability doesn't mean that you're not normal. Even as a disabled adult or human, we have the same feelings and hopes and dreams and desires and, you know, anger, feelings of anger. We have all the same emotions as anyone that doesn't have a disability.
Kids ever realize, oh, mom can't catch us, so we're gonna run, or we don't have to listen to mom because she can't do anything?
That's probably why I'm a yeller. It probably really is. I'm a yeller. I yell at my kids, and I wish I wasn't a yeller, but I know that my kids, like, they know I can't run, but they know I can skip really fast. And so I think they knew when they were in trouble when I'd be like coming at them at a fast-paced skip, as fast as I could. And it's probably as quick as a toddler's run. But they know when I start coming that direction in that side skip, they know they're in trouble. And if I've told them to go to their room 3 times, they know it's time to get to their room, because they know.
Did they take advantage of that when they were little?
Oh, yeah.
I think to a sense they did, but one thing I do have to say is I've been blessed with some pretty dang good kids like you. They're not ones that get in a lot of trouble. Like, I feel like I haven't had to set huge rules or even big rules on them. They just know. I don't know. I have been greatly blessed with awesome children.
Would you say that they're pretty independent, or?
I think fortunately I've been able to do a lot of the things like a normal parent can do for a normal child, you know. I've been what you'd say a normal mom for my children.